In this clip, we openly discuss the enigma of school shootings. Discretion is advised.
Very tragic things have been transpiring here in the United States.
Yeah, and it's not certainly the first time. And again, it's just frustrating, to say the least, when you see things happen and it doesn't look like there's any end in sight. But bottom line is, I think it's important for us to discuss. We're going to start by covering the story that's probably the biggest story right now. Let's start with some video, and then we can discuss. Here we go.
Welcome to Rob Schmidt tonight. This morning, reports of a shooting at a Catholic school in Minneapolis began to pour in. The details were horrific. Someone had opened fire on little kids at a welcome mass, the start of school. Immediately, you probably began wondering just how mentally deranged is this one going to be. You envisioned an outcast, somebody like Adam Lanza from Sandy Hook, or Nicholas Cruz from Parkland, or perhaps another trans shooter, as trans has become an easy crutch that our mentally ill have begun leaning on. Depressed, sick, and angry, I must be the wrong gender. We've seen several trans mass shooters over the last several years. Today, we added one more. Robin Westman, formerly Robert until a name change 5 years ago, 23 years old, killed himself after killing 2 little kids and injuring 17 other people, firing a rifle through a stained glass window into Annunciation Catholic Church in Minneapolis. A very creepy YouTube video was found by Westman, posted showing his cache of weapons. His rifle said, "Kill Trump" on it. He's breathing heavily. He's talking in a bizarre voice. This was a very deranged person. And state and city leaders immediately began to blame guns as the problem for this. The mayor of Minneapolis mandated that nobody talk about the fact that the killer was trans.
I have heard about a whole lot of hate that's being directed at our trans community. Anybody who is using this as an opportunity to villainize our trans community or any other community out there has lost their sense of common humanity.
Don't want to talk about this at all. Let's go back to the list of shooters here. These are the trans shooters that we've had in the last 7 years. Audrey Hale killed 6 at the Covenant School in Nashville, including 3 little kids, the most notorious on the list until today. You remember that one. But each killer was mentally sick. You also remember how hard our government tried to conceal who she is and her motives behind it. And perhaps more than to blame themselves, the killers, perhaps it is to blame the culture that we have and how we've chosen to handle an obvious mental disorder by feeding into it. Pretending it's okay
you have to be
question.
honest and say what will actually work, which is what nobody wants to hear, which is that there are just simply way too many firearms and they're way too accessible, and even if they are
too powerful,
and they're too powerful, even handguns too. Again, that's why in Australia it doesn't matter if it's not politically acceptable to say it. I'm not here as a politician or anyone who works in politics. I'm a journalist. Whether or not you like it, the only thing that really works, if you really wanted to bring down gun violence, was to do what Australia did and to do what many other countries in Europe do. I realize I will get so much hate mail over this. People will tell me that I'm a communist and all of these other things, and I'm so terrible, which also only reinforces the point, as I will definitely get some sort of like
blowback.
Not just blowback, but like threatening blowback, which is to say these people who are supposed to be so law-abiding are so quick to tell me that I ought to die or whatever else it is.
Or you better watch out.
Right.
Yeah, just to start off, it's completely heartbreaking. It's disastrous and it's very sad. I grew up in Israel. In Israel, there are no issues of school shooters. Most of the world, there are no issues of school shooters. That is almost uniquely an American phenomenon, unfortunately. But in Israel, the problem is terrorists wanting to enter schools and murder all of the children. And every single school has a security guard at the door with a pistol. Many times, some of the teachers have weapons on them as well. And we don't see issues in schools, thankfully. And that's, I think, something you have some opinions on.
Yeah, and we're going to cover this. It's interesting because as the school year was starting, we had already made a decision to cover school security in a dedicated topic on one of our In Focus videos. And ultimately, we will be doing that still. And I think that certainly there's something going on beyond gun control being the solution. I find it funny that the left, that's all it knows how to say. They use this as an opportunity. It's almost like they're happy that there's another excuse to talk about gun control. Yet again, as we've talked about before, cities with the most strict gun control laws have big gun problems in the United States. So clearly
Yeah.
that isn't the answer. That's like saying we have an obesity crisis and there's a problem with how people eat. Let's get rid of all their forks. Is that the answer? Is that the real problem? It's the same thing. That isn't the issue. The question is the one that needs to be asked is when I was going to school as a kid, I mean, there were people
Mhm.
that were disgruntled, had problems, this, that, and the other thing. No one ever thought of doing this. And it wasn't until the last few years, that this has become like more commonplace. Before it was like unheard of that someone would go and take a weapon to school. It didn't happen. People didn't do it, not because they didn't have access to weapons then. And in rural America, people had grown up around guns forever, but they didn't have in their wildest dreams the notion of doing these types of things. So that's to me the question that will provide some sort of solution. And in the interim, we have to better protect the students that are in school. And as we found out here in the United States, even having school resource officers and one police officer that's dedicated to the school, or two perhaps, may not work and oftentimes doesn't. And times we have entire police departments show up and they stand around for over an hour trying to figure out what to do. So this is not the way we want to protect our kids. And for this particular issue that we're talking about now, is this is someone who went to a school they used to attend, it's a religious school that has services. They had a beginning of the school year service and they were in church, and they went up, as far as I know, they didn't even go into the church. They were shooting from the outside indiscriminately. And they have a whole manifesto and a whole explanation as to why they were doing this. And as you and I discussed previously, they even wrote, that two long guns and they had a handgun and they wrote messages on the guns. As you mentioned, anti-Semitic messages.
Yeah, this guy, it's interesting, he wrote 6 million not enough, obviously referring to killing the Jews in the Holocaust. And then he also wrote some Islamic texts, and that's where you see this green-red convergence where radical left and radical Islam kind of meet in the middle. He wrote Mashallah, which is Arabic meaning God has willed this. So basically saying I'm doing this in God's name. And then he also wrote Nuke India, and Israel must fall. And he also references the 9/11 attacker, Muhammad Atta, who was a terrorist who participated in the 9/11 attack. Yeah, saying that the problem is the guns it's funny. At the end there, he was saying the only way to solve this is the way Australia did, taking away people's guns. We just covered last week how Australia is trying to take away people's machetes now. So apparently taking away the guns doesn't help when you've got lunatics and you reinforce them. My question to you is, we know that, like we saw, a lot of these past school shooters are transgender or part of the spectrum in one way or another, and are on some form of these radical drugs that affect these people's emotions and their brains in extreme measures. A lot of these drugs were originally made to castrate pedophiles and stuff like that, and then they were turned into kind of drugs that were supposed to make transgender people happy. So the question is, can these drugs have side effects that affect the children, these shooters, in any way, in addition to the radicalization that they've been receiving to their mental illness?
So that's what's being looked at now. One of the challenges is that the population that typically winds up getting gender affirming care, quote unquote, transition surgery, that gets medication, hormone therapy, they're also getting other medication. Typically, like most of these individuals have depression, so they're getting SSRIs and other type of medications that are mood altering. And the problem is that a number of these medications are known to have the possibility, in some cases, of causing either suicidal thoughts or homicidal thoughts, where you're going to go and hurt other people, murder them. It wouldn't be a far stretch. Certainly, the question has to be asked: is the treatment regimen being given to these individuals creating a much more precarious situation for them that can make them turn to this? It's, in my mind, without a
I
doubt,
mean,
it's
if
not
it's a
because
side effect, literally. Sorry.
I was
Go
going to
ahead.
say, it's not in my mind, it isn't because someone identifies as transgender that they're going to do this. See, that's the thing that the left is, they're coming out and they're saying, oh, we can't vilify the transgender population. That's not what anyone's really trying to do. Okay. We're trying to point out the obvious. There's a pattern. Okay. And it's not because you're transgender that you're going to be homicidal or suicidal or what have you, but there's something going on, right? And therefore, let's ask why. And because they tend to be on all these different medications, and anytime you do hormone therapy, it is mood altering by its nature, and then antidepressive medications. The question is, some of this treatment causing this group of individuals to act out in a manner that they would have never otherwise acted out? That's number one. And number two, perhaps they're not addressing the root cause or problem of the discomfort that the individuals are having, that because of the left primarily going and making it seem as if transgenderism is like so common and every third person is transgender, that must be your problem and you must fix that. And if you actually fix your gender identity, then all the other problems go away. And that clearly
It's
is
not your problem. It's the world's problem that every third person doesn't become transgender just like you have. You are the one, you are the normal one. Everybody else is screwed up because every third person should be a transgender according to what the media has been telling us. And that's the, like you mentioned, is the real problem. But what I think is that if it literally says on the flippin' box as one of the side effects that it can make somebody homicidal and suicidal, hint, hint.
Yeah,
Maybe that has something to do with it. Maybe we should
Yeah, I
stop
think
taking our
a lot
kids
of the
away from the phone.
people, including a lot of the reporters that are reporting this, they don't understand really what the concern is. The concern is that, yes, maybe we're creating a situation where individuals are being, they're becoming more unstable, and we're not addressing the root problem. They're gravitating towards this gender identity crisis and then being treated with all kinds of medications that are putting them in a situation that there's got to be a reason why so many of these individuals who are doing this happen to also be identifying a certain way. We have to look at that. So that we have people coming out and say, we can't talk about that. You can't, you're vilifying them. That's not what it is. We're trying to understand what's going on, what's being done wrong, and clearly something is being done wrong. That's it. And we want to stop this. We don't want anybody, we don't want this kid, monster, whatever you're going to want to call him, did all this, and then killed himself. Who wins? No one gets anything out of this. This is insane. Okay, it's a lose situation for everybody. That's ruined lives forever. And the question again is, what could have been done to notice a pattern of this guy's thought process and where he was headed? There's video out with him actually going over his manifesto, basically. We have some of it. I don't know if we need to even put it up at this point, because I think that story that was covered does pretty much encompass the ins and outs of this. And then, of course, you have MSNBC basically just talking about gun control, and that seems to be the answer to everything. And that's not solving the problem, just like removing the forks from individuals isn't going to stop them from eating the wrong food or overeating.
Read in detail I don't know if it was his manifesto, but the letter he left for his family. It basically seemed like a fairly nice letter of a child who realizes he's about to die and asking his family to forgive him. And he knows that he's about to do something really terrible and horrible. And he basically begs his family to forgive him for what he's about to do, which kind of makes it seem like maybe originally he isn't a horrible child. I think it's also worth noting that his mother worked in the school for many decades, I think, until she just retired very recently from the school. So it seems like he grew up maybe with his heart in the right place, but then at some point he was just radicalized and brainwashed into some real craziness. And then these drugs definitely didn't help. That's for certain.
Yeah, we got to get to the bottom of this. This can't keep happening. It's just, that's really, I think, where we're at. And
we said it's a unique American phenomena, and in the rest of the world, these drugs, and even in the UK and fairly other, let's just say, radically woke countries, they haven't been giving kids these drugs like we've been doing in the United States. Hint, maybe this has something to do with it.
Yeah, and we are changing the way we look at some of our approaches here in the United States, which is a good thing. But until such time that we figure this out, we do have to figure out how to protect our kids in schools, and how schools should not be a place where we're scared of sending our kids to. And again, I really would like us to cover that in the episode we had already planned, the In Focus episode, to just talk a little more about school safety and kind of the things. I live in Florida. Obviously, we had a tragic event here, the Parkland shooting, and it's pretty much the whole country has been thinking about this for years and thinking of what the answer is. And I don't accept that gun control is the answer. I think that we need to protect our schools from whatever threats, because there'll always be crazy people. And if there's too many car accidents, the answer isn't take away the cars. We got to figure out why are there so many people even thinking of doing this. And ultimately, if you look at the environment in the United States, there's a lot of odd things that we do here. There's obviously a lot of movement now to try to normalize things, fix things, get things back to the way maybe they were once upon a time. And before we started having school shootings, before we started having perhaps some of the crazy things that go on, and to move away from this topic, because I think there's not much more that can be said other than our condolences for all the people impacted by it.
Very sad. We need to keep asking questions and take the needed actions to end this recurring insanity. Be sure to watch our upcoming In Focus segment on school safety. Also, be sure to watch our other clips and shorts and the entire episode 21 of the YoJoe Show podcast.